a different video today. We are looking for students that are great collaborators. That's the thing I want you to get from today. We're interested in the collaboration. I know there's piano students from all over the world. What would you like to be doing more of on the piano? Because that's a really powerful question. What's the program? What's the plan? Why do you want to take piano lessons? Hello, it's Tom Donald from the London Contemporary School of Piano. Today, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're going to talk about how to plan your piano lessons with your piano teacher. I'm going to deep dive into this topic a little bit. And it's a bit of a different video today because I'm not going to play a note of music. I'm just going to talk to you about it. Because I know there's piano students from all over the world watching our work and watching what it is we do and our tutorials and our videos, which tend to be very much based on playing particular songs and chord progressions and contemporary things on the piano, as well as classical things. And I know these videos are a huge help to so many people, and that's wonderful to see. That's what we strive to do. We strive to help people from all over the world with what it is we do, because we know that not everyone in the world lives in London, obviously, and they can't just walk into a studio and take a lesson with us. So we enjoy spreading that word to the rest of the world. But really what it is you're seeing on this channel is only that. You're not actually seeing anything behind the scenes. You're not seeing what goes on in our classes week by week, month by month, year by year, and we've been doing this for 15 years. And everything you see on these YouTube videos are a result and accumulation of all of these classes that have taken place with multiple teachers, our wonderful team. Not just myself, a wonderful team that I've learned a lot from. And we learn from each other and our students, and in collaboration. You're seeing what has happened all of those years in accumulation of the research and the time and the constant improvement and perfecting our model as a school, our teaching model, and the results it brings to students. And you're just seeing that just put into a YouTube video. So I want to talk a little bit about you and your piano learning, because you can sit down and watch a YouTube video and you'll get a little bit of something from it. You'll get a huge amount of something from certain videos, and others you won't get as much. So why is that the case? Well, that's because you're an individual and you have your own musical journey that you're on, and you have things just like in anything in life, like your health. You have individualized, personalized things that need attention, and things that you're quite good at, things that you need help with. And that's part of the musical journey. And I can't, in a YouTube video, possibly diagnose what everybody watching me, everyone is watching me on these videos, I can't diagnose what it is you need. There is no such thing as one size fits all. But when you take an online course or you go onto YouTube, it's a one size fits all. So I want to talk a little about the importance of the coaching side of things and the teaching side of things, and having things personalized for you. That's going to be the topic of today, and how to get that working the most effectively it can be for your musical progress. So the first thing is you find a piano teacher, and the world is filled with many great piano teachers. There's no shortage of great piano teachers. So then once you've found a teacher, and this video is not about how to find a great piano teacher. I could give a video on that another day, perhaps, if that's a topic that people want to hear me talk about. I have a lot to say on that, but I'm not going to go into that today. I'm going to go into, once you do have a teacher, because I know many of you do have teachers you work with, and some of you used to have a teacher, or you dip in and out of piano lessons, or you're thinking of getting a teacher. Once you do have a teacher, what should you actually do with your teacher? How do you go about it? What's the program? What's the plan? I want to talk a little bit about that. And I'll talk about it from the perspective of what it is I do with my students and what our teachers do with our students. I'm not going to go into the full detail, because I could talk all day about it. And I've been doing this for years, and it's a topic I'm very passionate about. So I'd end up talking for hours on end, and that probably wouldn't be ideal. So I'm just going to talk about some general things that I do. And if you have any questions, actually put it in the comments. We can make this a bit more dynamic. If you do have questions, put it in the comments. I'd be happy to help. So what is it then that I do when I get a new student? I don't have much capacity for new students anymore. because I run a piano school and I have practice of my own. But I do it every year, maybe take on a couple of more students. Well, what I do, the first thing that we do in the first lesson is that we plan the lesson first, before the lesson takes place. And this just gives me the chance to assess the student a little bit, and I have a little bit of an idea of what it is they want to do or want to achieve. Rather than us having that conversation in the lesson, I actually send out a questionnaire. And the questionnaire, and I'm linking the questionnaire to this video right now. You can have a look at my questions. You don't have to fill out my questionnaire, but you can if you want to work with me. But I'm not advertising that because I actually don't have much availability for that. But I want you to see the questions. They're questions a bit like, well, what would you like to be doing more of on the piano? Because that's a really powerful question. I think it is a really important role and responsibility of any coach and educator to ask questions, not just to bark out instructions. That's why I wanted to make this video today, because I'm just giving instructions when I'm playing a YouTube video. You can't talk to me. We can't talk to each other on a YouTube video. So what I actually do in my real life is I ask far more questions than what it is you see on these videos. I can't ask questions at you on a YouTube video. So powerful questions are really important because I am fact-finding. As a teacher, I'm looking for information. I'm looking to draw information out of you. So I have a very clear understanding of what a great path forward for you would be, and I'll need your feedback on that as well. So that's constant asking of questions. And so one question I really love to ask before the lesson takes place is, what would you like to be doing more of on the piano? And then I have the opposite question, because the opposite question is just as revealing. What would you like to be doing less of on the piano? And again, this is me. The purpose of the questions is to collect information. It's not to make a judgment. So if someone says, I want to be playing more chords, but I hate playing scales, I'd like to do less of that, I'm not necessarily going to go, oh, great, let's never play scales again. But I'm not going to make a judgment either. It's just collecting information. And usually people give much more nuanced answer to those questions. And I have a whole bunch of other questions, some questions about goals, like what would you like to be doing in 3 months from now? What would you like to be doing in a year from now? Why do you want to take piano lessons? That's a good question as well. And then I have a whole series of questions. So once I see the answers to those questions, I can find out a lot about a student. One thing I do really enjoy doing is learning a little bit about the way a student learns. Because the thing is, particularly if you're an adult student, but children this applies to as well, but even more to adult students, and I specialise in adult education on the piano particularly, and that's what our school specialises in. All of our coaches are trained to work with adults and bring the best improvement to adult players, usually players that maybe learnt many years ago, stopped for a long time, and they're getting back into it again. Or beginners as well, a whole wide range. But it's really important to know how it is you learn. Everyone learns a little bit differently to each other. And you can usually categorize this into profiles, learning profiles, which is not a very sexy topic, learning profiles. But gosh, as a teacher, this makes a teacher and a student be able to remove barriers just like that. Just literally like moving a bit of furniture that's standing in your way so you can literally open a door and walk through it. That's how powerful learning profiles are. So often in the applications that I receive, or we receive as a school for our lessons, we can diagnose the learning style of the student, which then gives us really good clues as to how we should teach that student. For instance, one learning profile is procedure and another learning profile is options. I'll talk a little bit about the two. Now, procedure, who's someone who would be good at procedure? You can usually tell by the profession of somebody. A pilot is very good at procedure. Procedure is the ability to follow a step-by-step process, a sequential process that leads to a result. And if someone is very procedure-oriented, you're going to want to teach them that way. So if you're teaching a creative subject like improvisation, you'll want a step-by-step procedural process to learn it if you're procedure-oriented. So if someone tells me they're a pilot, I'm going to assume they're very procedure-driven. And if they're not, I'm not going in their airplanes. I mean, you want a pilot to be procedure-driven, right? But putting professions aside, because you can't predict this just from professions alone necessarily, you can find this out in the language, in how someone actually responds to a question, which is a whole psychology thing alone. But you can. Now, an options-based learner is a little bit different. An options-based learner doesn't just want to have a step-by-step procedure. They're going to feel a bit boxed in if they learn like that. They want to have a series of options. Oh, I can do it this way, I can do it that way or that way. I'm going to try this way, I'm going to try that way. Okay, I've tried all a bit that way. Maybe I'll move forward this way. They like to have more of a bunch of branches, and they want to decide the way that their education moves. And that's a creative options-like learner. And a lot of us are actually a bit of both. We're not just one or the other. It's not binary. And there are many, many dozens of other learning profiles. I believe that once you reach a certain age, I have students past the age of 70 that study at our school, and they're doing extraordinarily well. And the reason why they are is because we tune into the way they learn. I think once you reach a certain age, you're not going to change the way you learn. You're just not going to change. You're that way, and you're always going to be that way. So why learn something new in a difficult way, in a manner in which you don't learn things? It doesn't make sense. So we build programs, and it's really important. That's why I get those questions from my students before we start the classes, or any of our teachers. That's what we all do. We get those questions, and we investigate them, because then we get an idea of how the student learns. So that's the pre-lesson work. So, okay, you're taking lessons with a teacher. It's good for them to get to know you over an email. Tell a bit of a story about your musical journey. It gives them a little bit of preparation for that first lesson. It gives them a story. And most piano teachers, they're very, very busy. They might not have time to read that story before you start your lessons with them. But at least you've got it written down, and you've compartmentalized all of that. And they can read that story with you in the lesson, maybe. If you say, if you had the chance to read this, and they say, oh, no, I haven't, I'm really busy, that's fine. Let them read through it together. It just gives them some context. It's been planned. It's not just sort of some spontaneous conversation that takes place at the beginning of the lesson. So that's really important. Second thing, and if you're a piano teacher, you should offer this to your students. I know a lot of piano teachers follow our channel. It'll just really make a big difference. Just get that background before you start, whether it's in a phone conversation or whether it's just a little survey you send out. So the student can sit down and formulate their ideas. And it might change over time, but it's a starting point. And starting points are really important. So then we go to the lesson. So let's say I have a student that says, well, I want to play a little bit of this, and I want to play a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. That's quite typical. So I just had a student that I started working with, and he wants to play a bit of jazz. He's based in the States. So we do this online over Zoom, and we've been doing online lessons for so long that they are just as effective as the in-person lessons. Maybe the electricity is not quite there sometimes, but that's about it. That's the only difference. And many of our students fly over to Baker Street and come to meet us as well, which is always lovely. And we have our local London students. But I've just started with a student who we're working online together. And he wants to play a lot of pop music, but he wants to also play jazz. And what he wants to be able to do specifically, and he's called this out to me, he said, I want to be able to improvise over chord progressions and know what to do when I see chord progressions. And we had a whole list of things, and that was all diagnosed pre-lesson. And so then the first lesson is really important. And that first lesson allows you to just establish really then how these things are going to thread together. So, we covered it. And I don't treat the first lesson like an exam, like a test. I actually can find out a lot about their level of playing just by the way their written word describes them. Actually, it's really, after doing this for a while, it's really quite clear, even just on their written word. But when you hear a student, then you sort of have a really closer idea. So we started by playing a few pop songs that he already knew. And that's one thing. You can either bring in a few songs you already know and play it to your teacher for the first time. And I like to sort of have that about 50-50. He might have a pop song he already knew, and then I'll think of a song that's quite similar and say, well, let's try this song. And it just gives me a little bit of an idea of where he's up to. So we did a bit of pop music, and then we did a bit of jazz, and we did some 2-5-1s, and I showed him a couple of really nice chord voicings. I think it's good as a teacher to just have a couple of those things that are going to have instant return. So as a teacher, in that first lesson, you're looking for the lowest hanging fruit, the bits of advice you can show that will bring an immediate return, which is always really nice to show people. And there's always, for everyone, a bit of low-hanging fruit, things that they just haven't thought of that are well under their fingers. And then some more long-term, not so instant gratification things, but more long-term ideas and plans for their playing. So we go through these things, and so we went through some jazz, we went through some pop. I gave him a few new pieces that we played together, some new chord progressions. I'm just emailing things over, screen sharing them on Zoom. It's quite easy to do, or if it's in an in-person lesson, just giving these new pieces. You should try this, it's very similar to that, but it's got a little bit more of this in it. So we're doing those sort of things. It ends up being a 90-minute lesson. The first lesson, I always like those first lessons to be a bit longer. But now this is the key. You've just had a first lesson with a new piano teacher. Now the next step then is what next? What's the plan then? Now, we have to be careful. If it's too much of an over-orchestrated plan that goes on for years, you're never going to follow it. Yeah, life requires flexibility, so does music and piano. So what I then send out after a first lesson is a bunch of very important categories that we covered. So those categories might be groove, it might be chords, it might be genres of music that we focused on. We focused a bit on jazz today, and we did these things, and we added these things. So what I'm looking to teach the student in their first lesson, what you want to leave that first lesson with is some containers. So it's like I'm handing you some containers now, and I do this in a lesson report after the first lesson. It's not a report, that sounds a bit too formal, but it's like an email where everything's laid out really clearly. So it's like, here are some containers. Here's your pink container, here's your red one, here's your blue one. And the context of what we covered, all this music that's going around in your head and you're trying to figure out what to do on piano, problem so many people have is like, well, what container does that go in? That's your chords container. Yes, that's your chords container, that's your jazz container. So there's a bit of overlap, but you now have some, this is really powerful. This is really important to have those containers, because when you're practicing, you start to think a little bit more about what it is you're practicing. Oh, wait a minute, what is it I'm actually doing right now? Oh, I'm working on this container. So my job as a teacher is to give out those containers. And that's a really useful thing to ask your teacher. You say, look, because a teacher can't just tell you how to practice everything. I know us teachers can tell you how to practice, but really what we have to really teach you is how you need to figure out how to practice. Basically, the easy way to put that is we're teaching you how to make us redundant. Totally. I mean, I want to be as redundant as possible in that sense. I want you to build that ability into your practicing that you don't need a teacher breathing over your back 24/7, correcting you, telling you that's right, that's wrong. We actually want to teach you to be independent. So the containers is a really good starting point for that, because then you'll be playing something, messing around with something, you don't know what it is you're doing, you're just sort of having to play. Then you're starting to think, wait a minute, what is it that I'm practicing? Oh, it's in this container. So it's a starting point. And then often after that first lesson, then we have a plan. And it's usually a 4 or 6 lesson plan, not an exaggerated plan, but okay, over 4 lessons, this is what we're going to do. Lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4. For some students, I won't give out a 4-lesson plan because I feel they need a little bit more. They're heavily options, let's say. They need a little bit more leeway and creativity. Instead, I'll just focus on helping them with their containers. People that are strongly procedure-driven and I can really see a clear path forward, I might make a longer plan, like a 10-lesson plan with them over a very specific amount of time. and I know that they'll be able to follow that. So these are things that you can work with your piano teacher. What you have to remember too is this is the most important thing I want you to take from today. So if you've been listening to me all this time and you're still here, I've got the biggest gem for you. And it's very simple. Your teacher is not just a teacher and you're the student and it's a hierarchy. No, it's a collaboration between two human beings. That is what the best education is. So your job you have a job as a student, by the way. It's not just your teacher that has a job to deliver great lessons to you. No, you have a job as well. Your job is to be a good collaborator with your teacher and to collaborate with them, to ask them questions. How am I improving? What are the things that we could be working on? What is the timeline do you think we can achieve this? How I'd love to be able to do this. How do you think you'd be able to teach me to do this? What do you think from what you know about me already, what do you think are the drawbacks? What do you think the things that could get in my way and stop me from getting there? Because they can see, your strengths and your weaknesses, your consistencies and your inconsistencies. Collaborate with them. Ask them questions. A teacher loves it when a student asks them lots of questions. Like, don't just sort of be silent about it. And if there's something that you're unsure about, not even just a musical thing, but a progress thing. And you can say to your teacher, look, I would love to have a 4-lesson plan, but perhaps can you help me figure out some categories for my practice? Can you help me draw out a practice plan? Collaborate together. And don't just collaborate in the sense that it's a bunch of questions you're hitting them with and you just go one at a time. Start with 1 or 2 things. The more you collaborate with your teacher, the more things will wake up. And the teacher will be like, oh, okay, my student's really curious. So they want to try things a bit differently. And some teachers, they might not be used to that from their students, so that it will be a bit of a surprise for them at first. But that's a wonderful thing. And they will have to then adapt to that. Collaborate with each other. That is what has made me a great teacher, are my great students. And when I say my students are great, they're not great in the sense that they are playing at Carnegie Hall with Marta Argerich or they're the next Rachmaninoff or Liszt. No, a lot of my adult students are playing for the love of music, and they just play for a few friends at the most. But what makes them great students is because they've been great students of life, and they've gone through life learning things and collaborating with other people, and they do it really, really well. So they are the people that are the most pleasure to teach. The people that are the most pleasure to teach are people that really like to own their learning process. That's another thing you can write down. Owning your own learning process. They take responsibility for their learning. They don't just blame it on everyone else. I sometimes get red flags when people say, oh, I've had so many terrible teachers. And I'm sure there are some, there's good and bad teachers out there, whatever. I don't want to go into that. But I do get red flags when I hear that because that makes me think, is that just somebody who's not owning up to their own learning? They're just blaming everybody else. That can be a bit of a red flag, because someone who's blaming everyone else is not a good collaborator. So what we look for at our school, we do assess people before they come in and just learn from us on a one-to-one basis. But we don't assess them on musical ability. If you're missing a hand, a finger, an ear, you're blind, it doesn't matter. What you could have the most severe impairments. Our teacher's actually trained for that, so that's fine. You could say you're tone deaf. You could have never played a note before. We don't mind about the musical side. Is not what we're actually looking for in our students. We are looking for students that are great collaborators. Because students that are great collaborators, our teachers are phenomenal collaborators. They are recruited on their ability to collaborate with other people and grow with other people. And trust me, finding amazing collaborators is not always easy. And we have a very strict recruitment process to find teachers that are unbelievable collaborators. They can sit down with another person and just make magic happen. That's what our teachers do. But for that to happen, we also need great collaborators to come in, people that are like, I want to try something, I want to do something. So maybe if that's you, regardless of your musical level, because we're not interested in that. We're interested in the collaboration. So if that is you, you might want to apply to take lessons with us. All you have to do is visit our website, contemporaryschoolofpiano.com, leave an inquiry. And Kate, who is our head teacher and runs our enrolments, she'll have a quick chat to you on the phone, discuss the suitability, see if you're the right fit for us. But if that's not you, if you're just taking local lessons, collaborate with your teacher. That's the thing I want you to get from today, collaboration. And I hope that this gives you some great ideas. And let's see some great progress from your collaboration moving forward. And you can keep collaborating with our YouTube channel by clicking subscribe and enjoying our videos and content. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Speak then. Bye-bye.